All right, folks, we have finished sanding and we are ready to go ahead and put on our top coat. For the table, we're going to use a lacquer. It's a water-based lacquer, makes it real easy to spray and cover our table with a nice even coat. We're going to do that in the spray booth. We don't want to be spraying lacquer out in the shop. We want to limit the amount of dust. So we have a spray room that is filtered so the dust particles are limited so we can get a nice clean finish. Before we head into the spray booth though, we want to take and get as much of the dust off of this table as possible. So we're going to take just a piece of t-shirt or a rag or whatever and wipe this down completely and get any remaining dust particles that are on here. Remember, we just sanded this with 150 grit, so there's probably a lot of sawdust on here. So this might take a little bit of time, but make sure you're thorough in wiping this down because we do not want any sand or sawdust in our finish. So I'll finish wiping this down and we'll meet you in the spray booth. Man, there's a lot of dust on there. Gentlemen, we're back in the spray booth. We have cleaned all of the sawdust and debris off of our table so it is as dust free as possible. We're going to go ahead and put our top coat on, and that top coat again is lacquer. We have lacquer pre-mixed with lacquer thinner to help make it spray a little bit easier. And we are going to go ahead and use a spray gun to go ahead and apply our lacquer to the table rather than wiping it on or brushing it on or whatever. Maybe this is going to give us a nice even finish, but we have a couple of things that we need to do to make sure that this is going to be done correctly. Right now we have the lacquer thinner in the cup, okay, to keep any lacquer that might be in the gun after we stored it last dissolved so that this doesn't get all congealed and solid while we're in between sprays. Also inside of here is the nozzle for the gun. So we have a couple things to do here to get ready to spray. First is open this up carefully and take the lacquer thinner that is in the cup and pour it into the lacquer thinner can, making sure you don't dump the nozzle with it. So nice and easy, try not to spill a bunch. And then you're going to pull the nozzle out from what that was in the cup. Right. This is going to get threaded on to the front end of the gun. Right. We want it snug, but we still want to be able to turn the two prongs or the nozzle to change the direction of the spray. Next, we're going to fill our cup up with lacquer. Again, this has been diluted so that it will spray nicely through the gun. I'm going to pour, I don't know, half a cup. We don't want to overfill this. Okay, we can always come back and get more. It's best to keep as much in the larger container as possible at any given time. Recap this, okay, and we'll be ready to spray. Now a word on spraying before we actually start spraying. There are a bunch of knobs and dials on here, okay? This knob up here controls how wide the fan is going to spray. This knob controls the amount of material that's going to be let out when you pull the trigger. Both of these have been set, so you have no reason to go ahead and monkey with those. The nozzle, though, you are going to have to manipulate. And the way this works, or the easiest way to understand this, is that the fan, or when we spray the material out of here, it's going to fan out. The fan is perpendicular to the direction of these two prongs. So if I were to spray right now, the fan would go up and down like this. If I turn these 90 degrees, the fan would go this way. Okay, so as a rule of thumb, when we spray, we move the gun in the direction that those two prongs are facing. So let me get the air hooked up, we'll get the fan on, and we will start talking about actually spraying your table. All right, we are ready to spray. Lacquer's in the cup. I'm going to go ahead and hook the air up here. Okay, now the air is going to work by pulling down on this knurled collar and inserting the fitting and letting go of that collar, and that will fasten that in there. To take it apart, pull down on that knurled collar and the gun will come out. Alright, so we have now air going to our gun. Now, before you spray, okay, we have to make sure that the fan is on. To turn the fan on, we're going to hit the start button over here on the wall. Okay, that is going to draw all the overspray and extra lacquer that's in the air out, so we're not sitting here breathing it over and over. Now, to spray, a couple tips. We want to try and maintain a specific or a set distance from our workpiece the entire time we're spraying. Okay, we don't want to spray in an arc like this, okay, because we're going to be further away from our workpiece here. We're going to be really close when we swing the arc and then really far away. So we want to maintain nice straight lines. Okay, we want to maintain the same 6 to 9 inches, okay, from the table. Okay, and we want to try and overlap our spray by about 1/3. It's going to be hard to see, but I'll be able to see, or you may be able to see, how much of a fan is getting laid down and then how much I'm going to overlap it. When you start spraying, we want to start spraying off of the table. Okay, that way any boogers that build up on here go past our table and don't get thrown onto our table while we're spraying. And another little helpful hint, the air is getting sucked out this way, so don't stand over here and spray, because all that overspray is going to get thrown right back on you. So think about where you're standing when you're spraying. Okay, and again, organization is the key here. I want to make sure I hit every surface. So I might start with my top, move to this side, then the back side, then that side, and over here, and then do the bottom. Okay, and I'll do that the same every time I put a coat on, so I don't accidentally mess anything. So I'm going to start on the top, and I'm going to show you the top and maybe one side, and then we'll break and we'll talk about how to finish this up. And you'll see the finished table here in a minute. So again, I've got the gun, the nozzle laying sideways, so I'm going to move the gun this direction. Okay, I'm going to start spraying off of my table and be about 6 to 9 inches away with the spray gun. Overlap. Okay, now I'm going to come and do the front here. So to do that, it's going to be more convenient for me if I move up and down. So I'm going to change the orientation of the nozzle here, and I'm going to move up and down to get all the spindles and the legs at once. Move over here, do the legs, but now I'm going to turn the gun, because I don't need to spray right here. I just want to spray this rail up here. Okay? To get the bottom is a little bit tricky. Okay? You can turn this kind of sideways or on an angle so you can get the gun in here a little bit more. This is really just, there's no real good way to do this other than just get in there, okay, and keep the gun moving so we're not staying in one spot and getting any puddling. I'm going to go side to side for this. And we keep the gun moving. Okay, so that's one coat. I'm going to give that a few minutes to dry. It dries considerably faster than you'd think because we've mixed it with so much lacquer thinner. And as the lacquer thinner dissolves, it just leaves that lacquer on there. I'm going to repeat this process at least 2 more times for a total of at least 3 coats. I might come back and put an extra coat or 2 on the top because that's the surface that's going to get the most abuse. So I might put an extra layer or 2 on there. So I'm going to finish up spraying. I'll walk you through then how to clean the gun up and store it, and then we will talk about waxing. Okay, that was 3 coats. Okay, given a few minutes in between each to dry. Okay, it's time to go ahead and clean. Like I said, if you wanted to, you could get away with another 1 or 2 coats on the top. But I think we're ready to go ahead and clean. So to clean, we're going to take the leftover lacquer and pour it back in the lacquer can. So carefully open this up. And just like before, we're going to spray, or excuse me, pour carefully that back into the can, trying not to spill a bunch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put thinner in here. Maybe a third to a half a cup. Okay, and I'm going to use that thinner to dissolve all the lacquer that's still inside here. So I'm going to just gently kind of give this a little shake, stir, to get all the lacquer that's on the side of the cup and underneath here. And then I'm going to hook this back up to air. And I'm going to spray some lacquer thinner through the gun to try and force any lacquer that's still in the gun out. Make sure you do this into the spray booth. Just a few seconds and that'll get all the lacquer that's in here out. The last thing, take off the nozzle. And we're going to put it in the cup with the lacquer thinner because this nozzle has got a bunch of teeny little holes in it that we want to keep open. So don't just drop this in here. Okay, kind of slide it in so it doesn't spray everywhere. Lid this up. Hang that up and shut everything off. We're going to let the table sit for a good hour or so until it fully cures, 2 hours maybe, and then we'll talk about putting the last touch on the table with the furniture wax. Alright, we've made it. This is the last step in putting this table together and finishing it off. Okay, we just finished spraying lacquer. We put at least 3 coats on and we let it sit for a couple hours. Believe it or not, it is now a little rough because what happens with the mixture of the lacquer and the lacquer thinner, some of it dries before it hits the table, and you get little kind of rough spots here and there. So to take care of that and to add a little bit of extra protection, we are going to apply furniture paste or wax. And we're going to use steel wool to do it. The steel wool is going to knock down all those little nibs and bumps. The wax is going to provide one more layer of protection to the surface of our table. So to apply this, okay, we're going to open up the can and take a little bit of steel wool like I got here, and I'm basically going to just scrape and load up the steel wool with a little bit of wax. Not a lot. The more wax you put on, okay, the longer it's going to take you to buff this out later. Okay, I'm going to start on the top, and then I'm going to clean the whole top up, and then I'll work my way around to do the ends, the sides, the bottoms, and all that. Taking the steel wool with the wax, and with moderate pressure, I would say, I'm going to start pushing this in circles. Almost sanding and polishing at the same time. Okay? The amount of wax that I put on there is more than enough to do the entire surface of this top right now. Okay, I'll just keep going back and kind of picking up some extra wax from where I left off. Okay, I like to wear gloves for this process because the feeling of the wax on my fingers drives me insane. Okay, so it's up to you whether you want to wear the gloves or not. Okay, now I've done the entire surface of the tabletop. What I'm going to do now is, to make sure things are even, long strokes with the grain, kind of spread the rest of that wax out and even out any thick spots. Okay, now, next step. If I were really going to be waxing this entire thing in front of you right now, or make you sit here and watch this, I would move on to do a side and give this surface a few minutes to dry and let the wax kind of dry a little bit. So we'll go in and do some of the legs here. Get in here and do a rail. Spindle. We basically want to cover and wax this entire table to clean it up and get rid of all those bumps, nibs, and again get that fresh coat of wax all over it. Right? So again, the amount of time it takes for this to kind of dry before you move on to the polishing phase depends on how much you put on in the first place. I put a pretty thin coat on the top, so I feel pretty confident that it was pretty much dry by the time I was done wiping it out. I'm going to take a rag now, and I'm going to come in and basically buff the surface of the tabletop, taking off any extra wax, and believe it or not, the heat that's created from rubbing this out here is going to help some of that wax melt in to the finish a little bit. Okay, again, the more wax you put on here, the longer this process takes. And once you're done, again, we want to always finish with longer strokes, but that right now, folks, is really smooth. Okay, it feels really nice. So I'll go ahead and finish this side, wax the rest of this table, and then we'll see you when it's all done. There you go, folks. We have finished our table. That last little bit of wax on the top has made these surfaces like glass. And it's, again, added that little layer of protection that will help make this table last for many, 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 many years. So thank you very much for sticking with us and watching us through there, and enjoy the table.